zero, which is fair enough. All right, so we should be good
Okay.
now. So it's recording currently, and I will kick off with your
Okay.
intro. So, hey everyone, and welcome to the Power Within You podcast. I'm delighted to introduce Martin Pemberton. Now, Martin explored his passion for football, which led to his career of football, retiring in 2007 due to injuries. But from then, Martin started to mentor and coach, and is now the founder of business Just One to 11, which teaches couples and individuals a process that they can use immediately to begin to improve their current life situation, which I think is amazing and which we all need as well. So, Martin, it's wonderful to meet you and welcome to the
Thank you for
podcast.
having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I can't wait to dig in and have a conversation with you about your journey. So I guess where we could start off is, where do you think your mental health journey began?
I think that I became more aware of it after retiring from football, but now in retrospect, when you look back, I think it begins for all of us from the day we're born, right? I think that's when you look at, a lot of the things we
Absolutely.
talk about is helping people to identify beliefs that they've picked up in childhood and from the life that they've experienced, and then how we take those forward into adulthood. And we just say to people, beliefs are just stories that we've chosen to take on as true and believe. And it's actually when you realise they can be changed, that's a really empowering day, because once you understand that you've been thinking a certain way and that nobody's kind of made you do that, it's so empowering, and that's something that's been incredible for me. So I just always say to people, I think our mental health journey begins from the day, I suppose, we become conscious.
It is. And I think what I love, regardless if I'm coaching or doing a bigger development program, I always start with self-awareness, because I really feel like if you're not self-aware, you're not going to be able to manage yourself. And I was lacking that for a very long time because no one taught me about emotional intelligence, right? So when did you start to become conscious and
I
self-aware?
think when you mention that, I always like to think about being inquisitive as a child. Like lots of kids are really inquisitive, aren't they? And they ask a load of questions, and for us as parents and adults, sometimes that can be a little bit annoying because you've answered another question. But I think that that should be encouraged for people to ask these questions, because I always remember being a little kid and always having thoughts about different things in life and future, and then being fascinated by why people do the things that they do, So having that curiosity, I think, and something that I've still got to this day, certainly when it comes to people, I'm just fascinated by everybody's so different, so unique, yet we're all the same, if that makes sense. And the paradoxes that you find in life now are just quite incredible.
We are all the same because we're all human beings. It's how we manage ourselves is what makes us
Yeah.
unique, I think. Now, I mean, because you're in football, right? And I can't imagine. For me, the perception of that, especially maybe years ago, is that people didn't really talk about their mental health. And I'm not sure if they still do, but like, how did you like, was it then or like what happened during that
No,
time?
it's something that's not spoken about. Certainly in the male game in professional football, I know that for a fact. And oh my goodness, took a tumble.
So whack it. Here we go.
Wow,
That's how you get
that's it.
passionate, right? It's how
What
you
all was
stand.
that?
I'm going to do the same thing.
But so back to football. Yeah, you don't talk about it, because if you do talk about it, you're the weak link. Are you going to play the following week if you say that it's all right to be physically injured, but if you're mentally injured, then that can go against you. So I think in those arenas, and often, like if you think for many people now, it's something that we don't like to talk about or admit, is it that we might be struggling mentally, because it's still seen as a derogatory thing or something that's a negative.
Absolutely. And so how was it? What was it sort of transition from, being a footballer, having injuries, which must have been really difficult for you actually to deal with, and then becoming a sort of a mentor and a coach?
Yeah, well, so I think as well, having injuries, that's another thing in football where you have to come back if you're unfortunate enough to pick up injuries. There's that whole process of getting injured, being isolated from the rest of the team while you're doing your rehab, coming back, trying to get back to that level as well. And then when you retire, I became a learning mentor for disadvantaged children after that. And I did that for 6 years.
Wow,
I did that for
beautiful.
6 years, but again, that opens your eyes, and that's quite a tough job to be in as well. Certainly emotionally, you mentioned the emotional intelligence and things like
Mm.
that. And it was about 6 years after retiring from football that I suppose I noticed that my mental health had taken quite a nosedive. And when I look back now, the signs are there. But like you said before, if you're not aware and you don't know that they're coming. So I ended up actually going home from work with flu-like symptoms one day. It was like July. It was probably hotter than it is now.
Really?
Everyone else was wearing summer clothes. I was in a t-shirt, jumper, fleece. I was freezing.
Bless you.
So I went home, had a few days at home with man flu. Obviously, the difference is, yeah, exactly how it goes. For us, it's really serious, and for the ladies listening, they'll be like, it's just a cold, right? But I was due to come back to work, and I was sat with my daughter, who was, I think she was about 5 at the time, and we were watching TV. I don't even remember what we were watching, but all of a sudden, the only way I can explain it is like I had this well of emotion that just seemed to come out of nowhere and just rise up, all the way up, into my face, and I just started crying. Not like sobbing, but a tear rolled down my face. But the first thought for me was, I'm sat next to my little daughter. I don't want her to see her dad crying. So all those stereotypes and beliefs about men being strong already came into play. And so I kind of removed myself discreetly from the room. She had no idea. And I went into my wife at the time, and I kind of just broke down in that moment. And I said, I can't go back to work. And it felt like, I always say to people, it's like having a big slab of concrete on your chest that you just can't, you've got no strength to lift it anymore. And that's how I felt, completely flat, powerless, just kind of defeated, and just, I had nothing left in the tank, essentially.
Oh. Do you know what? It's really interesting you said that, because, you said there were warning signs like previously. What do you think those warning signs were for you that you didn't kind of pick up on, or you picked up on later?
What I've discovered now is that all my identity was wrapped up in that job of being a footballer, that role. Because I'd done it for so long, I actually couldn't detach myself from it, and I felt like all my worth was in that job. So when I lost my job or stopped doing that career, I didn't feel like I had anything to offer anymore. I think people who are maybe in the forces or who are in a career for a long time probably experience the similar things. And it's grief. I didn't realise that at the time either, because I only thought grief was to do with if we lose a loved one or somebody passes away. But grief is just loss of something, somebody that you love. And if you love your career and you can't do it anymore, then now it makes sense that why wouldn't you go through a grieving process?
Yeah. But that's the thing, isn't it? Like, we don't process stuff, and we're not aware of how to process stuff as well. When we, like you said, grief isn't about losing someone. It could be about losing a career or something else, and that really does affect us massively. And so this is interesting because, you were saying that you were working with disadvantaged children for 6 years whilst you were feeling that. Do you think what you saw in them and what they were suffering affected you as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because it's one of those jobs where emotionally you have to give so much, don't you? And you feel like you make a breakthrough, and then the child might go back into the environment that they're in, and of course those behaviours come back when they get back into that familiar environment, and then they come back in the next day, and it's kind of like the work that you'd done the day before. It's like starting again. So it's not, I wouldn't say like you don't make any progress, but it's kind of like one step forward and then a couple back, and then you go forward, so emotionally it takes quite a lot out of you, but you don't always realize at the time that all these other things are going on.
Absolutely. And then sometimes it does take that time where you're so overwhelmed that you're paralyzed from it. You get sick first, they become paralyzed from what you're feeling, and you can't do much. And that's why people go off sick and are burnt out. So what was then from that point onwards, how did you manage your mental health?
So I booked an appointment to see the doctor, which most people, they do, don't they? They go and seek help. But then
very sensible.
I was
Absolutely.
worried about that then, that what if the doctor said that there was nothing wrong with you, or going from that old mentality of football where you'd probably be ridiculed, or
sort it out, mate. Come on, sort it out.
Mate, pull yourself together, kind of thing. So I was worried about that, thinking, well, what if the doctor says actually? Because I didn't understand what was going on, or if there was anything kind of wrong at that time. I knew there was something wrong, but I didn't know what. And I thought, well, what if they say to me, you've got to go back to work? Like the worry about that was, more than anything for me. So the relief when I got in there and explained to the doctor, when the doctor said, "Oh, I'm going to give you a sick note for a few weeks," and it coincided with the summer holidays, so it worked really well that I had just a couple of weeks of being off ill, and then I had the summer holidays anyway. So that was a big relief. Prescribed me some medication as well, which I went on to for a while, and suggested that I go for counselling, which I did. But fortunately for me, somebody had either just finished their set of sessions or had not bothered to go in because there was one place available for me at that particular time. If I
Wow.
hadn't have got that space, I probably would have had to wait another 6 weeks or so. So I don't know what the outcome of that would have been, you know.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes do need a holistic sort of, you need different types of
Yeah,
therapies to help you through what you're going through. So it might not just be medication, it has to be sort of therapy, because you have to kind of be working on yourself. And I think, some people get into such a state of, depression that they can't then see a therapist because they're
yeah,
too low. So there is benefit, obviously, in that
yeah,
medication. It's just how it's
yeah.
managed, I suppose. So out of those things, did it all help you as a whole? And, like,
It,
was
it
that a
well,
sort of a
it
stepping
did,
point?
and the other thing as well. This is what we talk to people on our program is about support as well. It's recognizing and understanding, identifying who and what you've got for support, because that's critical actually. Because you can't go to everybody with the same problem. So, for example, I wasn't communicating effectively with the people around me, so the advice and support they were offering wasn't what I needed. Therefore, I was getting really frustrated with them because they were saying, "Oh, just keep yourself busy, go back to work, do." But and so that wasn't what I needed at that time. But then what I realised was I hadn't communicated that effectively. Again, I was hiding what was really going on, so they couldn't help me. You know, so then I got some help from the Professional Footballers Association, which was invaluable. And one of the things we talk about is setting a goal. So I was able to work with the person from the PFA and set a goal and an intention of, well, what do you want to do after football? And I said, well, I want to help people. I'm not quite sure how, but I want to know that helping is the thing. So my mentor said, have you heard of NLP? I said, no, I've got no clue what that is. And so he was like, he told me, so I think it'd be really good. He said, what I'm going to do, book yourself onto a course. I'm going to call you back in 2 weeks and see how you're getting on. So he put a time sensitive goal in where I had to take action, which was
Brilliant.
brilliant because it made me go and book on a course. And I typed in
Fantastic.
NLP. There's the list came up on Google. I saw one. I don't know how. I just had this feeling that was the one. Clicked it, sent, put a message in the box. Went to make a cup of tea. As soon as I came back, there was a reply from a lovely lady called Julie. And just when things just fall into place, like that was the first one. That was the feeling that I had that Julie was the right person to go and be trained by, which it wasn't. And in the end, this is the reason why she was the right person, because during the training, we were having a conversation one lunchtime, and I was just talking in general, and she asked me this question, which was probably stopped me in my track. She said, Martin, I'm interested. How much do you pay your friends and family to be around you? And I was like, what?
Wow, what a
What?
question.
What do you mean? What do you mean, Julie? I think I'm all right. But she said, because by the way you speak about yourself, people you'd have to pay them for them to be around you, right? And in that moment, I understood
Wow.
what she meant. The way I felt about me, I didn't have any of that self-worth, self-love, anything. That why would anyone else care to love me or
That's so
and and,
profound, isn't it? To
and it was one of those scenarios
wow.
where you hit a crossroads and you've got a choice. And I had a choice to run out of that room because when some you're going to start crying, right? And so I knew she had me, so I was like, oh,
Ready to
she's
run
got
out.
me. I'm going to cry. So I thought, well, I either run out
Oh, bless
and I
you.
keep running, or I stay and face it. And so for whatever reason, I chose to, and I wanted to face it. And so that was the starting point, the kind of the breakdown, the final realization of why my mental health has descended as well. And previous to that, I'd nearly been run over on the way to counselling, and I'd actually gone through the process of saying, well, I wish I would have been run over and killed because actually I'd rather not be here anymore. Like that's the kind of process I went through, and
Oh
so
my
that's when I
goodness.
realised as well
Yeah.
where how things really were for me. And at this time, I've got two young daughters, 5 and 1 years old, and those are the things going through your mind, you know.
It's so scary. And that's the thing, isn't it? Like, I know with, in particularly males, the suicide rates
Yeah,
are very high, particularly because, men feel it's very difficult to speak about their feelings and what they're going through, and can't
no,
see a way out of it, basically, because they can't talk to their mates, they don't want to talk to a doctor. But you took that really courageous and brave step to talk to a
yeah,
GP first, who could help you in the first instance. But what I really love is that even though you'd left football, the Football Association was still
brilliant.
there
Well,
for you,
yeah.
and were able to give you advice, which
Yeah,
is
they say
incredible.
once you remember for life, and they do all kinds of things for people to help them retrain or any kind of troubles that they may get into. There's always somebody there. So fortunately, again, I think for me, I was lucky that I had those things kind of on my side and in my corner, where some people don't have anything or anybody, do they? So you know,
Yeah,
mm.
absolutely. It's really wonderful to hear. And how long does that process take to really start to feel better? Putting all these things in place, you start the
Yeah,
NLP.
probably. So it was probably from getting the man flu, the first initial, my body telling me that I needed to sort something out, to the realization and the breakthrough. That probably took about 5 months, because it was probably the November when I had that conversation with Julie that gave me the real realization. So there was a further 5 months from physical symptoms to the real understanding of what and how I'd got to where I got to.
Yeah, and so were you able to, because you're off sick with a sick
Yeah,
note from work? Did you go back into the career that you were in, or did you decide to
I
change it
did, but
completely?
I think again, this is different. This was like, what, 2013. So I think things are different, hopefully, and potentially in most places now, in the understanding of kind of going back, because I had a phased return, but I'd kind of gone from being in a behaviour unit with 10 kids who'd had behavioural issues to being in a class of 30 where they would probably had the behaviours, the worst behaviours in the whole school. So they actually they actually put me back
Absolutely.
into an environment with more kids. And actually, the realization when I
Oh
couldn't
my
do that
gosh.
anymore was when I think one of the kids was, I don't know, running around on the table or something like that, and not doing as asked. And at that point, I got to the point where I was like, I was really frustrated. I thought, I'm either going to explode now and tell that kid off and be not very nice, or I'm going to have to let them just do as they want at this moment, because I no longer had the strength or the skills to deal with it. And at that moment, I knew I couldn't do that job anymore. So I didn't say a word. I just let them carry on rather than shout them, because it wasn't their fault. And I thought, right. And then I left that day, and I never went back, because I knew that wasn't going to be part of my recovery strategy. It was going to do the
No,
opposite.
no. You're surrounded by so much
Yeah.
trauma as well that these poor children have
Yeah.
gone through. But you know what I loved? We were talking about this before we started the recording, and it was around the co-regulation or the regulation of emotions, right?
Yeah.
Which is also part, not just
Yeah.
self-awareness, it's also kind of
Yeah.
managing your
Yeah.
feelings as well. And what I loved is that you said that you teach that to your children, which is so beautiful. And I wish more people would do that with their children as well, because they'd manage to be more resilient as they
Yeah,
get older,
definitely.
right?
Yeah.
As well. So tell me more about
Well,
that.
the way I say it as well, like imagine that in all our relationships. Like me and my partner Naomi work with couples now and things like that. But imagine if they co-regulated as well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
not even
Yes.
for kids and parents, but every relationship you have. What if you co-regulated with? So if that person's distressed, for example, you getting frustrated and wanting them to sort themselves out or shout at them is not co-regulating, is it? If you're wanting them to mirror the calm and nurturing environment that you're wanting to create. So by getting frustrated yourself, you're not teaching kids how to self-regulate. They need co-regulation. So, but then, like you just said, there's lots of adults who also need that, but we've never been taught it, have we?
Yeah. No, but that's the thing. I don't think I was ever asked about my emotions. How are you feeling today? Like, are you feeling okay? I wasn't allowed to express anger,
No.
as well, just being from an Indian environment. If I did, it would be
Yeah.
disrespectful as well, and I get
Yeah.
one slap
Yeah.
back
Definitely.
then. It was really difficult. So it's almost like figuring out yourself, but it's really hard to do that. And kids can't necessarily figure out themselves unless someone's teaching them. So what kind of, sort of tools and techniques do you use for your own children to ensure that they're good, they're managing themselves?
I mean, one of the things, certainly when people start to worry about kids, and kids do, often me and my partner always come back to, what is it that you can control about this situation? Yeah. What is it? What can you focus on? What can you control right now? Because often the thing that most of us worry about or have problems with are often things that we can't control. Yeah, that's
absolutely.
what the way I think of it now is that we talk to people about circle of control and circle of concern, and we feel that many people focus on the circle of concern, which is the circle you can't do anything about, and they don't pay as much attention to the circle of control. When we're saying, can we flip that? Can you pay attention to what you can do? Because also what we try to teach our children is that any way you're feeling is okay, but you're still making that decision. So if you're really annoyed and angry, it's all right to be angry. However, are you now trying to impact on other people? If you are, that's not cool. Maybe you just need to go away for a few minutes, learn how to calm yourself down, and then you're more than welcome back into the group. So there's never any judgment or criticism when you come back. It's all good because you've gone away and learned how to manage yourself. But the thing what we're discovering also now a lot with parents is that we take that away from our children. We want everything to be Disneyland for them, so we don't let.
It's the opposite, isn't it, to how we were kids?
But I think there's a theory behind, because we never had that. I think we've overdone it the other side, trying to make amends.
Overcompensate.
And it'll come back to the middle eventually. But so for kids, it's like, if they learn how to manage their anger, the sadness, all their emotions by practice, because we allow them without judgment, what kind of adults are we going to have coming through then? That's the way we kind of think of it. These adults who are compassionate, understanding, patient, because they've had the chance to practice. Most parents now take that opportunity away from the kids and then criticise them for not being able to do it.
And that's the thing, isn't it? So it's all upside down at the moment, isn't it? Like, it's just, like you say, we're trying to overcompensate because we never had that as well. And it's kind of managing the parents, but also managing the kids as well, which I think is super important. So tell me, so how did you get from, where you were? So you left work, not going back again because it wasn't part of your recovery. What was the journey from that point onwards to start your business? And what made you, what inspired you to start your business that you're doing now?
It was the process of recovery from my mental health troubles that I'd had after retirement. So naively, when I figured it out that it was down a lot to me and how I felt about myself and this identity, I naively thought that, I'm just going to be fine now. I'll just be happy every day because I figured it out. But what happened was I had lots of setbacks and failures. I'd be okay for a while and then something had happened or I'd find myself back in that position. And so for the second time in my life, when I said, I've had enough of this, but it wasn't followed by, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to figure this out. And that was the difference in those two times in my life when I've said I don't want to be here. Was this time it was like, but I need to fix because I don't want to feel like this anymore. So I simply wrote down all the things I've been doing in my recovery periods. And when I counted them up, there were 11 things on a piece of paper. So obviously the links to football, that's how the just 1 to 11 came, because managers used to say when we used to play football before squad numbers, if you win your battles 1 to 11, you win the game. And so in my mind, I was like, this is something that I could now take forward to share with other people. And so from that period now, we've developed it over the last, I suppose, I've kind of found that probably in 2014. And so I've just been developing it and improving it over the last 8 years to where it is now. And so what we've found is it's not just for people or part of a mental health recovery story for me. The elements of it are so valuable to everybody within society to use to help them with lots of different things,
Absolutely. And so and I think always the reason why you do a certain career sometimes, and I know that as I get older, is because of the experience that you've had when you're younger, right? So you're wanting to help people, especially go through that
yeah.
process as well. And I went to your website the other day, and I just love what you do. Like it feels warm. Do you know what I mean? Like when you going to the website, it feels
Oh,
really
thank
warm.
you.
And I just think everyone could do your help. So what is a core concept of your business?
In terms of what the core concept for us is, like, yeah, we want to empower
Yeah, yeah,
people because we the most frustrating thing for us is that people are disempowered and they don't think that they can change things, or they feel stuck, and they're in this place where they might never get out of, and knowing and being in that position, but then knowing that it's possible to get out is what kind of drives us, because we want other people to empower themselves and then have a sense of freedom, because when you are locked into that mindset and that way of thinking and you're struggling, you're not free, are you? So to move through that process and then be able to come out the other side, that's what we want for people. Because if you change, if you if you can change the way that you think about things and recognize patterns and then start to practice changing them, you can completely transform your life. Not even in the sense of, earning loads and loads of money or whatever, but just everyday life becomes very different. You now got a different perception of the world to the one that you used to have. So for me, it was, I didn't want to get out of bed and I didn't have anything to look forward to now 8 years later, I love getting up and doing what I do. But, it's unrecognizable. But over an 8 year period, it's those small steps that you put in place and try to be
yeah.
consistent with that then moves you forward. I want to give people, I
It
want to give
does.
people hope that, you know what, you don't have to stay stuck. It is possible to change. And so if we can do that and help people, then that's what we love to do.
And that's the thing, right? Like, I love what you say about change because people often get frustrated that change isn't
Yeah,
happening
yeah,
quickly enough as well. So I would like to say to everyone, like, it takes
yeah,
time to change. It takes time to
yeah,
feel better as well. And I often speak about the inner critic, the inner
yeah,
voice in your head. Like we don't speak about to
yeah,
each other. Like we have a voice in
yeah,
our heads,
yeah,
that right? It could be good, it could be bad. Lots of time it's bad. Lots of times
yeah,
it's
yeah,
negative, right? And it's like one of those things we're not aware of that sorts of stuff. And I know that what are the sort of similar patterns or areas or problems that you see through your
yeah.
business.
Well, we often call that the roommate, the inner critic. Like it's your roommate,
Yes,
isn't it? So,
yes,
and we often say,
it is.
do you want to live with that roommate? Because you can actually speak to that. You can speak to that roommate and tell them that you're not really appreciating the way that they are. Often, we also say with clients is that your roommate actually just wants a different kind of attention from you. Like they want you to say something nice to your roommate. I often talk about the angel and the demon. I used to call it my demon, that side of me. And actually,
Yes,
what I figured out
yes.
for me was that the demon was there to protect me if ever I needed him in life or death situations. However, all he needed was me to speak to him a little bit differently and appreciate him. And then he'd change the way that he would speak to me in my mind, if that makes sense to people, right? So that's that's
It
what I
does. It does. It's so simple way of explaining it,
yeah,
right? Like that's what happens. But we just don't understand. We're too ashamed to speak about what's going
yeah.
on in our heads. We don't think it makes sense to
Well,
anyone else. Well, it does because we all think the same thing.
absolutely. We've all got the same kind of things going on, haven't we? Similar experiences. And so, we talk about then is communication in our program. How are you communicating with others, but how are you communicating with yourself, more importantly? Because that is the most important conversation you're ever going to have in your life. So, like you said, become aware of what is the inner critic, what is your roommate saying, and can you change that conversation through consistency and discipline and repetition of changing the way that you speak to your inner voice, and then do it for long enough and it says something different to you. It starts giving you compliments and
Yes,
it's on your side. But often there's this battle between you and it, isn't there? And it's trying to find cooperation rather than competition.
absolutely. And so, is it right that you coach couples
Yeah,
mainly?
we will often, in life, relationships are quite a tricky thing. Again, something we don't learn at school.
They are very tricky.
We don't learn it at school, do we? So often,
Like,
most relationships and couples often start like that, and then they drift apart, don't they? And so for us, we want
yes,
couples
yes,
to be able to go like that and come back together. And so we do that through using the Just 1 to 11 It program, because what it gets each couple to do is it gets them to also kind of, like you say, be open and honest about where you're at as a couple, but it gets you to look at yourself and then work on yourself to then come back together as a different couple, because there's so many elements for couples that happens, isn't there, over time. Things don't stay the same. Kids come in, you stop spending as much time communicating or not at all. You either just grunt at each other, you sit at the other side of the couch watching TV or in your devices. You don't do the things that you were doing originally. And also people change and grow, and often we get stuck with the idea of the person that we used to be with and not the person we've currently got. And we do that with ourselves as well. It's like I often, when I hear people be so critical, oh, I was so stupid back then and I made this mistake. And I just say to people, so you're telling me the 30-year-old version of you is now going to hammer the 15-year-old version of you who didn't know what you know now? And they're like, oh, never thought of it like that.
Yeah, because you didn't know, right? Like, you just didn't know, and it's no point going back to that past and beating yourself about it. Because I think that I just think it's wonderful that you help couples, because there are so many people in that situation where they've changed as a person since they've been together, but don't know how to change together or become closer together. And so ultimately, you said, like, you drift as well.
One of the other things as well, if you think about it, when we do get with somebody, we're on our best behaviour, aren't we? Like we're
Absolutely.
Pulling out all the stops, aren't we? Because we've got a goal and an intention to get with someone. What happens for most of us is this complacency of, I'm with someone now, and then we just automatically stop trying as much, don't we, or doing the things that got us to the point where we were really enjoying ourselves, and then we kind of just drift. And like you said, those are it's like you said about the little things that happen over time that you don't really realise. I always equate it to, like, we have some fields near us where we go walking, and it's like you'll see the shoots coming out of the ground just start to grow, and then you'll go a few more times, you won't notice, and then maybe a couple of weeks later, and the shoots are up there now, they've grown, and you go, how did that happen? And it's like, it was always
amazing,
happening, but you just didn't notice the small incremental changes. And so I always use nature as a great example of how you can learn things from nature, right? It's always changing. It does it over a certain specific amount of time, but the changes are really minuscule, but over a long period of time, compounding, you get those massive results. And so we ask couples to just go back to, what were you doing before, to when everything was going well? Well, we were doing this, we were doing...
It's such a simple question, isn't it, to ask as well?
Like companies do it, we all do it. We never look at when things are going well. We never look at what we're doing for us to be happy, because I think we're just happy to be happy, right? We're like, yeah, we're happy, it's wonderful. We never realise how we got there. Only when things go wrong do we have an inquest, and then we go, oh, what's going wrong? But if we paid attention when we were doing really well, we'd be able to spot what's changed really quickly and then change that.
Yes.
So that's what we do with the 1 to 11, is we say, once you're doing really well, pay attention to all the things you're doing, because once it does drop off, nearly went again then, and then if things do drop off, you'll be able to see which one of the 1 to 11 you've stopped doing. And you'll be able to address it quickly, rather than drifting all the way back to the start,
That's so powerful. So would you call it, what you offer, is it like coaching, couples counselling, couples coaching? Like, what kind of, how would you define it?
It's couples coaching, yeah. We prefer coaching because it's about progression and moving forward. We don't like to, like you just mentioned, we don't like to stay too much about the past. Who did what? This happened.
Right.
We try to help couples to move out of the blame game, because if we're going to move forward together and take responsibility for ourselves, that involves no blaming and moving forward, and supporting each other. Because often, again, habits come in, don't they? You can get into a rut of just hammering your partner off, not thinking very nice things about them. But we say you can get into a habit of saying nice things as well.
I just think it's beautiful, and I've actually not heard of. I've heard of couples counselling, of course, and couples therapy, which I've been learning and reading about. But I think couples coaching is so great, because, and I think there's a massive benefit of therapy, because you do go back to your traumas, and you do have to look at your past, but ultimately coaching takes you forwards, and so it's very much action based, isn't it? So you'll get people to do stuff, straight away and implement stuff. So, and it's so powerful.
And we try to remove the guilt and the shame, because those things don't serve anybody really, and again, that guilt can often come from yourself, and we ask people to just be more proactive and more positive about their attitude to each other and themselves, and then they naturally start to to move forward. And then that's where the consistency and the support comes from us, daily contact to deal with any little things and help people to resolve issues a little bit quicker, but by teaching them the skills and the 1 to 11 steps that help them to communicate more effectively, which then it stops a lot of problems from becoming big problems. You can nip them in the bud just through talking and listening. And listening without judgment or trying to respond. And what we found as well, lots of couples are in competition. So whether it's
absolutely,
jobs have been assigned, job roles based on gender, sometimes the bins, the washing up, the hoovering. And so we asked them to remove all those things and work as a team, because actually, if you're going to be in competition all the time, who's had more time with the kids, who's got too much free time, who's done this, who's done that, you're going to always be bickering. And so we talk very much about, can you work in cooperation? Because that's the only way through this. If you're going to keep competing against each other, then it's not going to work.
No, and often there's something underlying under that, right? Like there's the irritated that you're doing the washing up, but there's something underneath it. There's always something underneath it, right? That's going to it's never the thing. I mean, he asked why. Like you said, kids are curious. You just go deeper.
It's as well, isn't it, of each person, and then that fear of being left that causes the behaviours, because that's where then people try to control the other one, because it's based on fear. I mean, one of the questions we ask each other, me and Naomi, is not why do you love me or do you love me? We ask, what do you love about me? Because
I love that.
If someone says, do you love me? And you'll go, yeah. And you'll go, why do you love me?
That's it. Close question.
Why do you love me? Oh, because I just do. Whereas actually, what do you love about me? It gives them the opportunity to have a real think, and then that connection grows a little bit stronger, because then now you're going to focus on what it is that you love about them. And that's a different question, which is powerful and often helps people to just realise that actually that's the question they should have been asking all the time.
No, it's so true. Oh gosh, you know what? I just think so many people could benefit from what you're doing, because it's invaluable, and I know that, couples are going through stuff, you can't help it, but I think it's such a beautiful thing that you're doing for the world. And it's really wonderful. So I guess my sort of last question to you would be, how do you find the power within you to manage your mental health now and for the future?
Because it's the power of belief. I realised that such a long time ago, that I believed one thing, that I had no value, no use to anybody, and I invested all my time into that belief, that it became a reality. And so I just figured, what if you invest your time in a different belief? One of, you've got value, you've got...
Yes.
So what I often say is, when it comes to, I believe, mental health and just life in general, it's like we've got this power. Everyone's got this power, and it's this power of belief. But we use it unknowingly against ourselves every single day by the way we talk about ourselves, the inner critic, all these things. When someone says to us, oh, you could do this, and we disbelieve them. So I already say, all you're doing is you're going to use the power that you've already got, that you deny you've got, and just going to use it in reverse. So this is where the empowerment comes from. You're already really powerful to create a scenario. And I just figured out, if I could spend the last 6 years thinking a certain way that took me to the depths, that means I can do the opposite. That's what I got from that, and it's down to what I choose to believe. And so now I think differently and practice that every single day. The negative things still come in. That roommate's still there, but we have a different conversation where I'll say, I'm not listening to you. I'm going out. I'm going
Leave
out.
back.
You stay here, I'm going out. Yeah.
Shut the door.
And I choose not to listen anymore. And it says, what I think is about giving people the power of choice, the understanding that you have got a choice. And once you understand the choices that you've got, hopefully you can start to practice making different choices that will change the way that you think. It'll change what you think. It'll change how you feel, and then it changes what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to repeat what you just said again. The power of belief, the power of choice. So amazing, right? Like if you just knew that you had that belief, that choice, life would be so different. And I think that's really powerful for what you're saying, I think, I really think that like I said, people can really benefit from your services. If they had a question for you or wanted to explore, coaching with you a bit further, how could they get in touch?
On social media, so Martin and Naomi. We're on. Where else are we? Instagram. Yeah, we're on there. Pen 1 to 11 and just 1 to 11 it. We're on, and they can go to the website. It's probably the best way. www.just1to11it.co.uk. It'll shine up nice and bright and pink, and they can put the details in and ask us a question, and then we just go from there.
Like I said, when I went into it, I felt very warm and fuzzy inside, basically. And you've made me feel warm and fuzzy inside too, after speaking to you. Honestly, it's been such a wonderful conversation. And I really appreciate your honesty and openness to talk us through your journey. It takes courage. And I know that, I hope this can inspire the people, which I know it will. So Martin, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today.